Hi, I'm Jen Lynn Roberts with Present Path Tarot, and this is Zoe Campbell, and we share a mutual fascination with his Dark Materials, the Philip Pullman book series, and now on HBO in the second season, which is the second book of this series. And we're going to talk about it today through kind of the lens of Tarot.
Yeah, and spoiler alert, I've also read the two recent books that he wrote that are not on HBO yet, La Belle Sauvage and The Secret Commonwealth, so spoiler alert if you're waiting to read those and you haven't yet.
Some information might get passed.
By accident.
Yeah. But read them, and if you need a Christmas present for someone who loves amazing fantasy, great thing to get. So we're going to talk about the characters and how they relate to different elements of the tarot, and also you'll learn the tarot by listening to this some.
Yeah. So one thing we kept noticing is over and over and over again, Philip Pullman is using a really tidy hero's journey, and it's fun to think about where different characters are at different times and which major arcana cards they represent. So I guess we'll start with Lyra. Should we start with Lyra?
Lyra is the major fool. I mean, she's the head fool. Other characters have fool moments, like Mary Malone and Will, of course. But Lyra is the fool of the story. She's the one we're going on this journey with.
Yeah.
So
she's starting on the journey, and then I guess we have to talk about her parents, right?
Right, so her parents are the Emperor and Empress because that's the nature of the maternal being the mom, but both of her parents are the shadow side of the Emperor and the Empress. Mm-hmm. So neither of them raise her, and she's raised by scholars, which puts her as a swords element at the beginning. At the beginning, she's smart. She's called Silver Tongue, so she's very good at lying and her name's Lyra, and she communicates via lying on occasion to save major plot shifts in the story.
Yeah, she's definitely a swords character mainly.
At the beginning. Yeah, and then she evolves in some ways.
Yeah, in some ways. I mean, I think also some element of cups as she gets older and she enters into adolescence, some more control of emotions, but still the base of it is swords energy.
Clever.
And even reading the alethiometer is a swords activity.
Right.
When she gets older, also in the Secret Commonwealth, we learn more about her as she grows up and she becomes a scholar herself. She's studying and she's deep in intellectual activities, and
so she's very much a swords fool.
Yes.
Yeah. I think a lot of swords is going on in the book, and I want to read. Take your note away. I want to read a little bit. When I teach a tarot class every year, and I'm about to lead it again online for the first time, and in it I like to read this one part because I feel like this captures divination, the essence of reading tarot cards as well. And in the book they also talk about the I Ching, which is another divination system. So Philip Pullman's giving some beautiful credit to this art, and in it she says, remembering what Father Coram had said, who's another emperor figure. She tried to focus her mind on 3 symbols taken at random and clicked the hands round to point at them, and found that if she held the alethiometer just so in her palms and gazed in a particular lazy way, as she thought of it, the long needle would begin to move purposefully. Instead of its wayward divagations around the dial, it swung smoothly from one picture to another. Once or twice the two of her and Pantalaimon shared a glimpse of meaning that felt as if a shaft of sunlight had struck through the clouds to light up a majestic line of great hills in the distance, something far beyond and never suspected. So, that's what it does feel like to read the cards. You kind of have this like epiphany of just seeing something and not understanding why you know that thing. So I love that about the books, that they are referencing the art of divination, and that she is a fool who's using divination as her spiritual gift. Yeah, and then so the mom and dad are also playing kind of the magician in the sense that they send her off on her journey north.
And the high priestess maybe giving gifts, or what would be an example of that?
Well, the alethiometer is a gift, and she receives that from one of the scholars, but also
through her father.
Through her father, right. So he is kind of the magician and high priestess in that. And then she, Mrs. Coulter, who's also very swords, right? Because she's super smart.
I think so. Probably mostly swords.
Yeah.
The Lord Asriel is a bit more wands energy, right? In search of power. He's quite cunning and intellectual in the things that he does with it, but at the end of the day, it's kind of an energetic charisma that propels him to do all of what he's doing.
Right, and he's also spontaneous and can be very selfish, which is a part of the wand's nature as well. He there's a certain fly by the seat of his pants. Even though he knows what he's doing, he's like determined and pushing forward in a very fiery way. And he also, so he gives her the alethiometer via a scholar, and Mrs. Coulter gets her out of her safe zone, takes her on the journey from her overworld into the beginning of the underworld, so into the transitional world between the north would be the underworld and the magic realm of wonder.
There's so many more underworlds though. Anyway, we'll leave that for another chat.
Right. Well, it's the beginning. It's like it's so great. She goes through layers, like Bolgia of Bolgia is a word from the Dante's Inferno. And so you go through the layers of hell, in a sense. And, right, so...
Yeah, she does. And she comes back out. And it's a good hero's journey.
Right. Civilization outside the school is her first layer, and then the Egyptians take her on a journey, and then she ends up in the north, and then she ends up with the specters, and in our world... Just each one is kind of another step into another underworld of some kind, or a strange, different world. Yeah. Then what else about, and you love Mary Malone, and she's another person who goes on a fool's journey. Can you talk about her a bit?
Yeah, I guess we were debating whether or not she's kind of a swords person or a cups person, or how that works. I mean, swords because of her intellectual activity, but it's this more human connection, this more emotional pull that gets her out of her academic department and into another adventure, literally into another world. So she's very much playing the fool right now, as our final HBO show is showing us as she steps through one of the windows into a totally new world where she's never been. So and definitely stepping from being more of a yeah, I don't know, she's cycling into another part of her life, I guess, and starting her own hero's journey at this point when we meet her.
Right, and she also, she's given that guidance by the machine she's created. So she is a creator, a magician in a sense, who's created a machine that then gives her magician divine guidance to enter into the other realm through, and says you'll be protected. So that's interesting too, that the machine itself that she creates becomes the driving willpower for her, which is the magician message for her.
That gets her out the door.
Yeah.
Another thing you were talking about that's lovely and fun is this idea. So Jenna pointed out, she's like, oh, people and their demons in Lyra's world, when they have them, sometimes have really opposing qualities, but find some balance that way. So I guess I was thinking the most dramatic of this being probably Lee Scoresby, who's all cups, right? The only reason he does anything in his hopeless romantic mind is because of emotions and ties to other people, and this idea that it's going to be more interesting if he takes his balloon somewhere else. So he's just literally kind of a dreamer. And then his demon, in contrast, Hester, is this really down-to-earth Pentacles rabbit who's like, Lee, like, don't you need to drink water? Don't you want to put a jacket on? Shouldn't we think carefully about this before we do it? So
right, yeah. Kind of and so what would Pan? I won't say Pan. What is Pan then, do you think? I mean, she's swords, and Pan has an action. It takes action a lot. It often does the wand's action for her, where it'll like attack something, or I don't know, get her to look a different direction that spontaneously pulls her a different way than she would go logically.
I mean, I think it changes as she gets older, and this is one of the recurring themes in all the books, is this thinking about transitioning out of childhood and through adolescence and into adulthood, and thinking about the things that you gain and you lose when you go through that shift. So when we meet her again later in the Secret Commonwealth, she's older, and she's gone through all of this, I mean, almost, I guess, all of these horrible things have happened to her, right? She's gone to the abyss and through all these layers of Dante's Inferno, and she's come out again, and now she's a young woman trying to live in society and be normal. And she goes through this phase where she is really interested in these kind of existential writers who are talking about the world as a really logical place, devoid of emotion, and this idea that relationships and love and creativity are delusions. And her demon gets so frustrated with her. Pentaloon is really frustrated, and they're fighting and arguing. And at one point he tells her he's leaving and he's going to find her imagination. And so I was like, oh, Jenna, which element is that? Probably cups, maybe? I don't know.
Imagination,
this creative imagination.
I think imagination is definitely the combination of the mind and the heart. And so to me, that's swords and cups.
That makes sense too, because Lyra has she has the cups element, but it's just she's been burned in, difficult life circumstances over and over. And so she's going through this, not adolescence because she's past that, but she's going through this rough patch where she's trying to decide how to deal with all of the emotions that come with the part of her that is cups, but she's rejecting them, and then Pantaleon feels like he has to burden, take on the burden of all of Lyra's cup energy and figure out what to do with it for her. So it's this very sweet thing where she's kind of turned that part of her off, but she can't get away with it because it's expressing itself in this other way through her demon.
That's really interesting.
Yeah,
I gotta read these other
Keep
books.
reading.
I gotta read these other books. And then there's the other element of Will, who his name is Will, so there's that. Makes me think he might have a magician quality to him. And then of course he's in control of the subtle knife, so there's also that wand movement of the subtle knife.
I think of him as being so pentacles though, because he's always so practical and pragmatic about how he's going to do things, right? He does things really carefully and thoughtfully and cautiously. Again, maybe that's the way that he was also brought up too, but I think of him as being one very concerned with kind of the day-to-day realities.
He's very responsible. He's responsible for his mom. He's responsible to go find his dad. He takes responsibility for Lyra a lot of times.
Very duty-bound.
He's very duty-bound, yeah, so he's definitely pentacles.
There's another fun character in the next series. There's a character named Malcolm, and he's interesting too because he's someone who, when Lyra meets him, when she's old enough to remember, when she meets him, he's a scholar and he's a little bit older, and she thinks of him as being all swords, and she's not really very interested. But he also has this background of growing up by two parents and growing up in this pub and doing all the work in the pub and fishing and hunting and doing really kind of blue collar things. And so he has this deep pentacles element, but most people don't see that when they interact with him professionally, and they underestimate him a bit. So he's a good spy for that reason. He looks like something on the outside that's very different from what he is on the inside. I forget what his demon is. I forget. Anyway, it's kind of interesting.
That's interesting. Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, I'd also say, just thinking of the demons and how they have different elements, the monkey of Mrs. Coulter is straight up wands.
Oh, really?
It's very wands.
Gold fire.
It's very just like, just gonna take care of stuff. It's very much action monkey,
What about Lord Asriel? He's got the snow leopard.
Yeah, he's just sexy. He's just sexy with his snow leopard.
Which element is that? Just sexy.
That one is probably wands if it's sexy. I mean, there's kind of that like sexy charm, like that.
Yeah.
The
power
thing. Yeah, it's hot. I don't know his snow leopard well enough because he's not. I don't know how much action it takes, but it does take. It's more of an action thing too.
Yeah, she'll come later.
Yeah.
One more to finish us off.
What else? And then
the Hierophant. There are all these. Yeah, there are all of these characters and structures that play into the Hierophant card. And we'll talk about that.
So this book was designed by Philip Pullman as a response from an atheist to the C.S. Lewis Narnia stories being a Christian parable. And that's a Hierophant reversed card. He's trying to overthrow one Hierophant. But in a sense, I feel like this story is just chock full of different Hierophants. So you have the scholars, and they have their system and their rituals and how they do things. And then you have the Egyptians, and they have their system and rituals. Even though they're nomadic, which has less of a locked system, they have, rituals of how they welcome youth into, their demon has picked their form, and that becomes a ritual. And then the Magisterium is clearly the biggest, most straight up Hierophant. I mean, that is a Hierophant of Hierophants, of Pope-like, Catholic-like structure that will do anything to protect the structure of itself.
And the armored bears. Well, I always remember that because the deck I read with the Hierophant card is a polar bear, and so it's easy for me to make that link. But they also have a really complicated, hierarchical, very rigid system of doing things and way of governing themselves that is kind of independent of a lot of the other systems within the book, but is also really very much a Hierophant card
Yeah.
setup.
Yeah. They have, yeah, they're again, the systems that they're in. So I feel like the Fool card is obviously a major part of the story, and the Hierophant is a major message of the story on so many levels, because this story is trying to upheave systems and question systems, and even the systems it creates, it upheaves. I mean, as you get deeper in. When she tells me things about it, I'm like, it's not even, there's no stable ground to walk on in a way, because I feel like Philip Pullman will kind of pull the rug out from under you once you get comfortable with, this is a system we're going to trust now.
He's a master. So let's wish him well. And good health to you, Philip Pullman, so you can finish your trilogy. And we can all enjoy.
And she's impatient for it, so please hurry. Yeah, so thanks for listening today. I love talking about movies and books and the tarot, and I hope that you will dive into his dark materials, watch the show on HBO. There's a good movie. People don't like the movie, but I like the movie with Nicole Kidman. I think it's fine, of the first book. And, you know, treat your young adults and old adults to dive into the books for this winter. They're great winter reading because they take place in the north, in the snowy north, and ooh, it's so exciting in the north. So so yeah, please subscribe to my page. I'm going to be doing more things like this where we talk about the hero's journey, where we talk about looking at things through the lens of tarot that are media, like movies and TV shows and books. So more to come. Hope you enjoyed, and have a lovely reading time this winter.
Bye.
Bye.